As entrepreneurs, we are inventors, and understanding intellectual property, including trademarks and copyright rules and how to protect our intellectual property, is key and vital to our success and the success of our business. So how do you do this, and how do you protect your IP when you are in business and when you are inventing all these things in your company? Today in the Waist Up Wardrobe studio, I am interviewing an attorney, a trademark attorney per se, that is going to tell us all the do's and don'ts about how to protect your intellectual property, including trademarking and copywriting as well. But you know the drill. You have to stick around to know more. Welcome to Waist Up Wardrobe. I'm Christine Vartanian, an attorney turned personal style expert and image consultant. As the founder of Jade House of Style, I am passionate about unveiling the inner confidence of my clients by developing their personal style and dressing them for success. But is getting dressed up still important in our virtual world? Well, that's where my experience can help with what I call Waist Up Wardrobe. Waist Up Wardrobe is a podcast for all things you need to conduct an outstanding Zoom meeting. It's about how to dress for the camera, but it's not just about the clothes. It's about everything you need to know to show up on brand and professionally for the camera. Join me in the Waist Up Wardrobe studio to discuss how to navigate this virtual world and dominate from behind the desk. Good morning, Waist Up Wardrobe Nation. Thank you for joining us for an episode of Waist Up Wardrobe. This is episode 139, and I am really looking forward to bringing you today's episode because it's an episode that really can be very critical to so many business owners. Because as business owners, we invent things in our businesses, we create things, and we want to be able to protect those ideas. So we're going to be talking about trademarks today. And we're going to be talking with a guest who's highly specialized in this area. She's a trademark attorney, and she will be giving us all the do's and don'ts and maybe answering some other questions that are burning questions for us. So before I get started, I want to say thank you for being here for another episode of Waist Up Wardrobe. And you know it, we have a full library of content where we bring you an episode every week on a weekly basis live to show you how to up-level your virtual presence, how you show up on camera, not only in the way you show up physically with your appearance and your lighting and your technology, but also with your mindset. And the show has a lot of entrepreneurial nuances like today's show, where we're going to be talking about trademarking when it comes to your business. But also know that we are on iTunes, so you can listen to us while you take that walk or that hike or that run or just that relaxing walk on the beach. We are on iTunes. You can rate us and review us, and you can catch whatever show you want on there because they're all there. So, and I also want to say thank you to my super awesome producer, Rick Moscoso, who is without him, this show would not be able to be produced. And especially like days like today, you may have noticed that we started late because we had technical difficulties, because that's technology. Technology happens, and we just have to troubleshoot. So without Rick, I don't know how far we can get. So thank you, Rick, for being the master behind the technology and behind the scenes. And I just want to take a moment to introduce our very special guest today. Our guest, Cheryl Hodgson, is a leading trademark and entertainment attorney representing online business, global brand owners, music artists, authors, publishers, and technology companies in business strategy. She works with IP protection and licensing as well. Hodgson Legal Services assists clients globally in IP and brand protection, and Cheryl has extensive experience as a litigator and mediator of trademarks and copyright disputes in U.S. courts. She is the founder and publisher of Brand Aid, host of the Brands Revolution podcast, and author of the best-selling book, Registered Trademark, The Business Owner's Essential Guide to Brand Protection. So please help me welcome Cheryl to the show. And I am really looking forward to having this conversation with her as we talk about and really explore branding and all its nuances and all the do's and don'ts. Hi, Cheryl. How are you?
Hi, Christine.
We had a little bit of a technical mishap this morning, right?
Yeah,
But
that's the
we're
way
here.
it goes. We're here. I'm happy to say we're here.
We're here, and it's a pleasure to have you on the show. I'm really excited about, digging into a lot of your expertise. As you know, many of the viewers of Waste Supportive are business owners and entrepreneurs. And you and I have had conversations around trademark and copyright a lot. And I know how much attention you give your client to securing and protecting their intellectual property. So I was just thinking, this is like you'd be perfect candidate to kind of talk to and pick your brain so that we can learn more about this area of the law as it relates to entrepreneurship. So what do you say? You ready to answer my questions?
I'm ready.
All right. Well, before we get started, I always like to do a little 60 seconds to get to know you. These are not technical questions. These are this or that questions. We just kind of want to know who you are. How about that?
Oh, sounds great.
Okay. So just tell me the answer that comes to mind. Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Why?
I have one right here.
Well, what is your dog's name?
Her name is Minnie. This is Minnie.
And Minnie, how did Minnie find you?
Minnie found me because her former owner asked me to take care of her for 2 months in January of 2020 and never came back to get her.
I actually kind of knew that story. And as you're talking about Minnie, I'm like, oh, I just remember hearing that story. And I thought, that is wonderful. How long has Minnie been with you now?
She's been with me since January of 2020, 3.5 years. And she actually is used to being on camera because her former owner did marketing all day live online.
I see. Nothing like a dog to really make your video presence more fun. I have a lot of clients that love to have their pets in the camera when they're working, so I get it.
Well, sometimes I'd rather have her not in the camera, but she's very demanding.
No problem. We love having her. So I have another question for you. When it comes to the way you dress, do you think about your image as more style or more fashion? Like, which one do you do you relate to? Which word?
Well, I like to think I combine both, but I do love fashion.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You like the new trends and and just being fashionable?
Not as much. I think when I was more younger, I probably paid a lot more attention to trends. Although just this last season, I've been very thrilled with some of the trends of colors, because you know how colors come and go.
Yeah.
And my colors are bright, like fuchsias and reds. So there was a lot of fuchsia. And I even got the courage to wear a little Kelly green.
Oh, I could see you totally rocking that. Red, I think, is a great color for you. I've seen you red a lot, and I think it's really cool. You have a very cool sense of style. I know that's something we always talk about when I see you. So one final question to get to know you. What is tell us one of your favorite hobbies?
Well, I've been studying yoga for 25 years, so that's one of my really big commitments to myself. But I would say if I could make more time, one of my real hobbies that I love is scuba diving.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, and so I've been on several liveaboard boat trips, and I'm hoping to go on another one this September to Fiji. I haven't been in quite a while, so
That's great. That sounds like a great hobby. And so you know how to scuba dive, and that's a thing for you.
yes, I
Wow.
love it. I started it years and years ago, and then I had a long gap in between in my youth because, it's not something you run next door to do, right? It's not like going to the gym. It's
Yeah.
a commitment.
Yeah.
And, and but I decided about a decade ago, it really meant a lot to me after I kind of got rekindled a love affair with it.
Yeah.
And it's so spectacular to actually be under the water and see the fact that something like 85% of the world is underwater
Yeah.
of the planet, and there's so much we don't ever see,
Yeah. Yeah. It's
and
like a hidden secret, you know?
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's spectacular.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I love hearing about my guests' personal interests because I think it just kind of it makes you more than just the expert in the field that we're going to dive into, but it's really cool to get to know the people behind, the business that you're here to talk to us about. So now let's get to business because I'm really curious about a lot of the work that you do. I've heard you talk a lot about trademarks and how you guide your clients. And I feel as though when I talk to you about that, like I feel like you have this certain special something that when you are working with a client, you really are very invested in protecting their trademark and protecting their intellectual property. And so I want to dig deep into that, but I really kind of want to set the stage for the audience. What is intellectual property just as a foundation? Like, because people get confused, there's trademarks, there's copyrights, there's all sorts of things, there's brands, there's logo. Like, tell us, uh, kind of in a nutshell, if you can, what intellectual property really means,
Yeah, well, I would say that probably the best analogy is to say there's tangible property, which is all the things you can touch.
right?
Real, whether it's your car, your house, your iPhone, whatever it might be, anything that's a physical product. Intellectual property is something you can't touch.
Mm,
It's comes from, I'd say, the mind, it's creativity. It's different types of creativity. But that's basically it. And it's very similar to personal property. It's just the ways in which you protect it are a bit different. And
right.
there's a lot of different types of intellectual property too.
Yeah. Well, can you give us like an example of one or two types?
Yeah, well, the most traditional ones that people are most used to hearing and where people get confused because no one ever tells them. It's not because it's just, it's not something people walk around talking about every day, is patents, trademarks, and copyrights. And they're three separate and distinct things. A patent is an invention, and it can be a chemical patent, a mechanical patent. You being an engineer yourself, you would appreciate that aspect of it. And patent attorneys are all engineers. And biotech and electronic patents are probably the most widely used and defended and prosecuted in today's world because we have so much technology. And then there's trademarks, which protect the names of products and services that you market, carve out a niche in the marketplace so that that's really intended to protect the public. That's the reason for trademarks. So
Yeah.
that, you're not walking around seeing 10 different versions of McDonald's or any other brand for that matter. And then copyrights protect your creative expression. So anything that is either written, spoken, visual, so it would include artwork, graphic design, uh, Even software, believe it or not, the code to computer software is protected by copyright. So yeah, and then poetry,
Yeah.
music, artwork.
Yeah, and you deal a lot with, people in the musical, industry, the musical artists, so you probably, because I know from my conversations with you, you have done a lot of that.
Yeah, that's where I started out just because I was so interested in it when I was young, and now there's a lot of overlap,
Yeah,
it's not it and, actually, I kinda look back and I think about, the different type industries, particularly, say, for example, in any industry, industries have grown up around the different types of intellectual property.
yeah,
In other words, the music industry has its own set of not so much laws, even though there is specific rights under copyright law, but within that, there's all these sort of ways of licensing and customs and practices that have grown up within that industry. Same within the film industry. You
yeah,
know, that's audio visual work. You could say the same thing about the art world,
right.
right? Uh,
Well, that's interesting because I my next question kinda revolves this is an industry I would imagine that changes. This is this area of the law that changes a lot in terms of, legal standards, especially now with the innovation of AI, NFTs. How have you seen those things that are sort of still kind of the wild, wild west impact, um, your area of the law, if at all?
Well, I can say for sure the internet was the biggest change in trademarks, and it's still being felt because there's always a lag time between the law and how it catches up, but also the public understanding as well. It's not just the law itself, because for example, we haven't even gotten started in AI yet, right?
Yeah.
Because it's so new, and I think that's the next frontier for sure.
Mhm.
But I still see it with, and it's a big issue, I think, with entrepreneurs who are starting out in business because, for example, what's the difference between a domain name and a trademark? Or do I need a trademark? And a lot of that just comes from the fact that years ago, and to go to your point, there was no internet, there were no domains, so a trademark was literally packaging on a box of cereal. That's my one example I like to use.
Yeah,
And it didn't go anywhere. And the internet changed that
yeah,
completely.
yeah,
And now it also goes global. It can go global, especially if you're successful. So, yes, it's changed a lot.
yeah, and, so that's kinda the interesting thing when it comes to protecting ideas and inventions and thoughts and, this kinda thing that, entrepreneurs are constantly inventing and creating. You spoke a little bit about the purpose of IP. You said, that it's designed to protect the public, but what else is it designed to do? What else is the purpose of IP?
Well, it depends on the areas. And by the way, there's another aspect of IP too. One aspect that I think is really important for entrepreneurs to grasp. It's actually your most valuable asset. So it's not just about not getting sued. It's not just a defense thing to protect yourself from being sued. It's also a proactive way of building business value. If you think about, just look for example, there's not a day that goes by that you don't look in the business trades or even on regular trades and hear about another lawsuit of Apple being sued or Apple suing so and so over infringement of its patents or infringement of copyrights by artists or whatever, because it's those are assets they've built up that they own.
Yeah,
And when what I realize is now when people go to sell a business or bring in an investor, the most important part is what are your assets? And those assets aren't usually, unless you're involved in real estate, the assets investors or buyers are interested in is not anything other than your intellectual property.
yeah, yeah,
And it's a form of risk management. It's like mitigation of risk. So, any company, all you have to do is look at anybody that's a successful company, and they're usually very committed to protecting and building their intellectual property for that reason.
yeah. No, that and also intellectual property makes you stand out from competition because, so it's important to protect that in a sense. No?
Well, and that's fantastic observation, I think, because that's really what sometime when I'm counseling clients, especially startups in trademarks, um, i- and that's where it shows up a lot is people tend to want, especially new entrepreneurs, they want to describe what they do. And so they pick a name or that is either based on like a kind of a descriptive domain name or describes their product or service. And that's the opposite of standing out from the crowd.
Mhm.
When you start describing what you're selling or marketing in your trademark or in your intellectual property as the title of your intellectual property, you're by definition have very limited protection, and you're
Yeah,
definitely not going to stand out.
yes.
I don't know if you've ever had this experience. I just heard recently that Apple's finally going to start requiring trademarks for new apps in the App Store. And I thought, well, that's about overdue because I don't know about you, but I've gone in the Apple App Store and they all have the same name, half of them, and it's like, I just use that as an example of how do you stand out, right?
Right. Well, that's a very interesting point you make because, personally, because of my business, I've had conversations with my trademark attorney, and I've done multiple things in my business, as got the big audacious earrings box. We've got waist up wardrobe. There's all these things. There's also an element that I added called three socks in a box. It's more of a men's subscription program where they get three socks in a box. And talking to my trademark attorney, she explained to me you can't really trademark that because it describes what's in it. Does
Correct.
Can you explain that a little bit more?
That's exactly it. There's this provision in the trademark law that says, first of all, a trademark by definition has to be distinctive, meaning it's not descriptive or generic.
Yeah.
And there is a section of the trademark statute that says you can't protect an item or product or service which describes the quality, characteristics, or ingredients. So that's a little technical, but it's actually three words that are very broad,
Yeah.
right? So, in other words, it encompasses a lot. Um, you can, in that example, you might not be able to protect the words, but what I've learned over time, you can get it on the main registry by putting it with a logo and
Ah,
registering that. You'll have to disclaim the words and not be able to claim them for at least 5 years. But after 5 years, you can move on to the principal register. And if it's a name someone's really committed to, it's not my favorite way of going after it, but it can give a deterrent effect. Let's put it that way.
mm,
Because just by having a registration on the principal, what they call the principal register, that has a logo plus the words, that can be somewhat of a deterrent to other people who are thinking of choosing the same name. Now, if it's very difficult to enforce those.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's so interesting. The whole area of law is so interesting because you are always working with creatives, right? Because that's the nature of what you're protecting. You're protecting the creative work, products, impressions, mental creations of your client. So it's such a creative industry. So I'm curious, in your experience, what has been something that a client has come to you with that felt like really like a wow thing, like really creative, really interesting, if you can talk about it, I don't know, or like give us
Oh,
a hint about it.
wow, that's a great question. I have to think about it. um, Certainly in music, on a talent side, in my earlier years, I spent a lot of time in artist management, music publishing. So that was not really forward facing trademarks and that sort of thing, but it was from a creative perspective, it was phenomenal to be
Yeah.
around some of that kind of talent. Um, but from a trademark perspective, I have a client, a woman who's actually she's a singer musician and very very talented, and she kind of dropped out of the pop scene years ago, but she's always been into what we call yoga chant music or sacred music, and she has a band. She's in Long Beach, and she just came up with some of the best trademarks I've ever heard in my life. And I asked her where they came from, and she said, I don't know, I just woke up and downloaded them one day.
You're
And I
right.
s-
You're right.
And I'm like, and there was like 4 or 5 of them, and, we filed for all of them, and I'm sure they're gonna go through because they're all so unique, but, uh and I think the lesson there with that and choosing a name, that's one of the biggest things I try to counsel people on is, when they come to me with a name, unless they're especially now, I'm just gonna editorialize a second here. Your example of the 3 socks in a box, I think that's actually very creative,
Mhm.
okay? And I'm not sure because if you think about it, and to some extent, it's an oxymoron.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean? How often do you hear somebody say socks in a box? It's got a
right.
great ring to it,
With
right?
the rhyming
Uh,
piece, right?
right,
With the
right,
word.
yeah. So I think there's potential with that. You have to work with it a little bit. But what trying to say is, you know, sometimes people you can make a slight change to something that would otherwise be descriptive and turn it into something that is unique.
Yeah,
So you just have to like sit with it and take enough time,
yeah, yeah. Well, I might have to sit down and brainstorm with you on that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I think it's great.
So I I want to know, like, a lot of businesses they say, "Do I need a trademark? Do I need to trademark this? Is it just enough that I'm using it in the industry?" What would be your response to that?
I would say if you're building a business that you want to grow and have for the long term, and you would like to be known and carve out what I call your sandbox to play in or your safe space, you really do need a trademark
Yeah,
because there's nothing worse than starting. And I've had this happen a number of times where people start out, they don't get a trademark, and then, somewhere down the road, they think, oh, well, maybe I should try to get a trademark. And somebody else has already got the name because they
yeah,
didn't carve out the niche. I mean, I really think of a trademark as carving out a space within your market area. In
yeah,
other words, whatever niche you're in, whether you're in clothing, your fashion brand, or let's say you're a technology company, it doesn't matter. Whatever niche you're in or category or marketplace you're in, you're just trying to create a place within to which you can operate safely. Now, if you're on the other hand, the people who don't need trademarks are or local businesses like a florist. A dentist probably doesn't need one because a dentist usually markets within a very small area around where they're located. And they're not going to be marketing or attracting clients or customers from across the United States or even in another town often.
yeah,
So those types of businesses, now there's exceptions. There's a lot of small boutiques now. Here's a great thing. You're talking about change. Just think about this. Um, Amazon now has required for almost a decade now, they have something called the Amazon brand registry for the little small entrepreneurial companies that sell on the Amazon marketplace.
mhm,
And in order to be one of the trusted merchants in the Amazon brand registry, they require a trademark. And those were by and large little small local businesses who went into a big marketplace, right? So that changes. In that case, they probably do need a trademark. In fact, there's been hundreds of thousands of those companies, and they had such a problem finding trademark attorneys. Amazon has its own referral network for trademark attorneys now,
yeah.
uh, for just those businesses.
Interesting. Are you one of them, or is that something that like, trademark attorneys want to be part of?
I don't know. I'm not. But for example, I think the other great company along those lines is Shopify.
Yeah,
Shopify is, that one's even more brand centric, I think, than uh, something like Amazon, because a lot of the Amazon brands are like not. I'm not judging. I'm just saying, they're not necessarily distinctive company names or brands. Whereas with Shopify, a lot of those are small boutiques, whether it's in clothing or food or all kinds of products.
yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah. Well, I think it's, really something important for companies to think about. I feel like when I decided to trademark waist up wardrobe. It was exciting. It was like a new level in my business. It was, I felt official. I felt like a grown up business. And I I feel like, it just makes things official, and it just solidifies and protects you as an entrepreneur and your ideas. But it does have a lot of purposes, like you mentioned earlier, to trademark. Um, some people or some business owners will say, well, I have the domain name. Do I still need a trademark? And what do you say to that?
I say that I think it's one of the biggest problems in my entire business, and I think it's one of the largest problems in the especially online world, because there's a lot of misconception about it.
Mhm.
And I personally think that it comes, and I've just come to this conclusion after years of seeing it, uh, that it comes from sort of the way the domain craze started early on in the internet world, which was there was a lot of people saying all you need is a descriptive domain name because it's good for search engine optimization.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Hotels.com spent probably several $1,000,000 trying to protect the name hotels.com. Guess what? They lost because it is a generic descriptive domain,
Yeah.
right? Um, so, uh, you know, a descriptive domain name is a great thing for a marketing campaign, for a specific opt in, but not, in my opinion, for building your whole business around it.
Yeah.
And without getting too technical, detailed, I can tell you that I've been saying this for a number of years, and I'm now starting to see it in my practice. I have several cases right now, two of which are at the Trademark Trial and Appeal Board, which is the administrative board, where it's people with descriptive domain names that are basically having an argument with each other.
Yeah.
And neither one of them chose a name that was distinctive. So and just to go back to that a minute, I'll back up because it's a form. When I say the domain, there's nothing. By the way, if you have a distinctive trademark in the domain, in other words, like waist up wardrobe, I don't know if you have that, but if you had waistupwardrobe.com
I
and
do.
you have the trademark, that's great to have both,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But a domain is not a substitute for a trademark, because this is
Yeah.
the thing to remember about a domain. A domain is the same as your street address. If you live at 123 Main Street without a trademark, it doesn't matter what you're selling. And it doesn't matter whether it's descriptive or distinctive. Without more, all you have is an address of where you live on the internet. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And it
Well,
doesn't become more without a trademark.
yeah. And that makes a lot of sense. Now, so it's important the trademark is important. That's the kind of the umbrella that protects all your pieces, but the domain is addition it's like kind of a subset of your entire brand. It's great to have that, but the trademark is the kind of trumping thing that you really have to pursue for protection. Is that right?
Absolutely, because the difference is, it goes back to what I was talking about creating your sandbox. Once you have a trademark is for selling specific products and services. Okay. So, in other words, it creates like a zone of protection around you within which you can market and know that if number one, a later entrant, meaning a person who comes along in 3 years or 5 years, hopefully will be rejected as a result of your existing trademark,
Yeah.
right? If you don't have a trademark, they're not going to really know you're out there, right? So it's kind of like I always also, uh, I think the best analogy is like recording the deed to your house. It's
Yeah.
like if you own your home and you come home tonight and somebody pitched a tent in your front yard, you'd be able to call the cops and say, you've got a squatter in my front yard.
Yeah.
They'd kick them out, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to go to court to prove that you own the property. You have a deed recorded at the county registrar's office that says, I'm the owner of this property.
Yeah.
Or you have a lease if you're the tenant, right? But a trademark in that level is no different,
Yeah.
right? It's like it's what you said. It's like it made you feel like you're a grown-up business. the term I use for it is it legitimizes your brand.
Yeah.
It makes it legal. And
Yeah.
it's constructive notice to the world. And as a lawyer, you know what that means. A constructive notice just means is you don't actually have to know I have a trademark. You're charged with looking me up at the trademark office and find out it's already registered by somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's the benefit, I think.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great analogy that you give us on street address, the home and the squatters. Like it's a really great way to wrap your mind around why it's important to really make it official and get your trademark to your product or invention. So is there an easy way for you to give us just sort of a abridged process to getting a trademark? Like, what would be that process that somebody has to go through?
Well, it's gotten more and more important. I will be honest, for years, if people were already using a trademark, I didn't say do a search. Just go ahead and file, because you could wait. If you were willing to take the risk and wait 5 or 6 months for the trademark office to look at it, they'd probably come up with most things. But now it's not a good idea to launch a business or even think about choosing a name if you don't do the search first. That's step one. Why? Because number one, the trademark office is now taking 10 months to 1 year to look at an application. So if you file tomorrow, they won't look at it until probably next June.
What's the holdup?
May. A trademark is becoming ubiquitous in our society. And that's the other part of the conversation, going back to what we just talked about, is almost every other day. I mentioned Apple. I mentioned Amazon. If you want to protect your Twitter handle, if you want to protect or enforce somebody takes your Facebook handle, if you don't have a trademark, nobody's going to talk to you. And now Apple's, as I said, was talking about requiring it in the App Store for new iOS apps. So when I say it's becoming ubiquitous, it's the gold standard for default to enforce your rights. So if you go to any of those platforms or you have a problem, even with a domain name, by the way, that's the other part of it. We didn't talk about that, but one of the most common things that happens every day is domain squatters. And if you're not successful, don't worry about it. If you're successful, it will happen.
Yeah.
Where companies they'll do variations of domain spellings and divert traffic from you. And, there's a way to shut those down if you have a federal trademark. Yeah. So all of it goes down. So I think that's the biggest issue. And we also now have international treaties that make it very, very easy for foreign applicants to file into the U.S. based on their foreign registrations. So the volume of filings is just astronomical.
Yeah.
And they just can't keep up with it.
Yeah. So there's a lot of people understanding that this is important, and there's a lot of inventors wanting to kind of protect their work and their ideas.
Well, and I hear stuff every day. I heard one about 2 or 3 weeks ago that I couldn't believe. I'd never heard this one. Like, boy, this is a new twist. Yeah. And who would have thought? This company that had these trademarks for years didn't maintain them. One of the things you have to do is renew them, and they let theirs lapse and kind of forgot about it. And the next thing they just found out is somebody from Russia through Mexico went onto their website, got photos of their products that they actually sell, and went to the trademark office and reapplied to register this company's trademarks, and they got them.
Oh my, that's a tough one. Yeah.
Right. But that kind of stuff goes on, and it's like having insurance at some level.
Totally. Yeah. It's totally like that. It's like insuring your ideas and your trademark and your business image and brand, right? So let's go back to the process. You talked about you have to search first, and I interrupted you, and you said sometimes as long
No,
as
no, no, that's okay. Well, I have this thing, I might have shared this with you when we were talking earlier, but I kind of narrowed it down to 3 things. I call it the 3 things you have to do before you file.
okay,
It's not the filing, and that's not what you pay a good trademark lawyer for, by the way. You don't pay them just to file. A good trademark lawyer is going to counsel you about what you do before you file. And I
okay,
think there's three things.
okay,
The first is I call it the art of the trademarkable brand. 3 steps. A stands for is it available? And that's what we talked about. That
mhm,
is it not already registered or in use by somebody else?
mhm,
We've also talked about the second one. Is it registrable, i.e., not descriptive and generic?
mhm,
You're going to get rejected if it's descriptive.
mhm,
So you need to know that going up front. And the third is, which sounds minor, but it really can be sometimes one of the most challenging things I deal with clients is trademark use. It's you don't know how to use it as a trademark. Uh, there's specific rules, like about 100 pages of regulations that specify how, you know, how government regulations are, right? There's a lot of them in every field. And they're technical rules. They're not hard. They're just very specific.
yeah,
And if you don't submit samples that meet the regulations, then you're going to get rejected.
right,
And sometimes you can fix them, sometimes you can't. So I really work with clients to say, do these 3 things first. And if it turns out it's not available or you find out it's descriptive, find that out before you spend the more money to file it.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's a really good nugget of advice. The art, you said you call it the art
Art of the trademarkable brand.
of the trademarkable brand. And
And by the way, there's a real reason for that because the
okay, tell me.
statistics are 70% of all applications receive a first refusal.
Ah,
So
yeah.
if you want to minimize your risk for being rejected,
You have to
those,
test it.
those are the 3 reasons most
Yeah,
of them are rejected.
yeah. Those are the 3 prong test. That's a 3-pronged test to understand if it could be trademarkable or not, right?
Right. Yeah.
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 That's a really good rule of thumb. It makes it clear for somebody who doesn't really do this all day, that is thinking about trademarking. Do you think you need an attorney to get your trademark done? Do you need to hire an attorney for this?
I know it sounds like it's self-serving.
Yeah,
Even if you don't hire me, I think so.
yeah,
Some people are able to do it, but you know, it's I had a person who I counseled with a week or so ago, a brilliant, lovely young woman, and she had done so much homework.
mhm.
I've never seen anybody who had researched more, and she had sent me all these printouts and all this stuff she'd found at the trademark office. There was only one problem. Both of her trademarks were totally descriptive.
Ah,
And I'm like, you're not going to be able to get those.
yeah,
So, I I hate when I have to tell somebody that, but I'd rather be honest with them than take their money,
yeah,
which quite frankly, a lot of the filing services would do. They give you a cheap price, but they're not giving you advice. They're skipping those 3 steps.
yeah,
That's what you're paying an attorney for, is
yeah,
those 3 steps. If you think you can navigate those 3 steps on your own, then go for it.
yeah.
And some people can do it.
Yeah, no, think that's really interesting. It's a good thought to have if you are on a budget. Here's another question. Back in the day when I was in college, there used to be this idea of a poor man's patent. I don't know if you've heard a poor man's patent, where
Oh,
you're inventing an idea, you write it in an envelope and you mail it, and then you keep the sealed envelope. Is that a thing?
that is the biggest myth I've ever heard, and I would love to know who started that, because I've heard it in the music business for years, where we're like, I proved I wrote it, the lyrics, so I put the lyrics in an envelope and mailed them to myself, right?
Yeah.
Um, that's where it comes up a lot. That doesn't work in trademarks at all.
Does it work
Uh,
with copywriting or patent or
no,
no?
no, because there's a lot of other issues. And by the way, a copyright is so inexpensive. A copyright, you can fill out a form. Now, you definitely don't need a lawyer for a copyright.
Yeah.
I just want to make that clear.
Yeah.
Okay. A trademark's a lot more technical for the
Yeah.
reasons we just discussed. A copyright is put a notice on it. And this we should talk about because it's really important. It costs it's like, I think it's up to $50 or $60. Okay. You fill out the form. And in most cases, unless you have a big volume of work where you have to send in a thumb drive, you can actually upload the copy right onto the platform.
Mm-hmm.
And it's super easy. It's, it's not complicated to do it. And why is registration of a copyright so important? And I can't emphasize this enough. We have a law our copyright law is written to say you have a copyright from the moment of creation. So if you sat down and wrote a poem on a napkin, you have a copyright protection for that. But here's the problem. If you don't register it, you have no remedies. The remedies which are what they call statutory damages and attorney's fees are all predicated on the fact that you have a registered copyright. You've registered it. If you don't, you're limited to proving actual damages and profits. Let me tell you for sure, having been in federal court, I hope to never see another case like that. Yeah. You can spend millions, and I'm not exaggerating, just trying to prove damages. So in other words, here's a great example, because you've heard cases like this. Oh, they use my music in a commercial on TV.
Yeah.
Okay. If that music is not registered as a copyright before the infringement and they sue, they have to prove what percentage of profits were attributable to use of the song. That's almost impossible. Think about that. Because let's say they're selling shampoo. I don't care what it is, right? In the ad. How do you know that how much the music contributed to the sale of the shampoo?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you can't. I mean, I don't know how you can quantify that unless you have people saying, "Oh, we love the jingle" or something like that.
Right. Well, but it's the same thing. It's even a more basic if somebody uses a photograph.
Yeah.
On a blog, let's just do that. I mean, it doesn't have to be that fancy. That's that's the problem whereas if you have the registration, if nothing else, it allows you to extract a license fee. Do you know what I mean? Because I hate to be honest, but I'll tell you, people who infringe, if they know you don't have a registration, will just say, too bad, sue me. Because they know you're not going to be able to do it. No lawyer is going to take the case.
Yeah. Well, I feel like the topic of trademark, copyrights, patents is such a wide topic, and we can talk about it on multiple shows and really dig deep. But we're gonna have to wrap up soon. Maybe you can come back on the show and we can get even deeper. But one question I want to ask you last, and then I'm gonna do the Waist Up Wardrobe wrap up, which is sort of a summary of the key things. But I would want to ask you, being in the branding industry, being in the trademark and all this kind of thing, I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but what companies do you see out there that you feel like have like a great brand, a knockout brand, one that's on point, one that feels like I would say, like, what are your favorite brand or brands that speak to you as a consumer yourself?
Well, it ebbs and flows, but mostly flows is Apple. I mean, I was enamored with Apple because they occupy a really unique position in our society globally. And they went from almost going out of business to Steve Jobs coming back and reinventing it.
Yeah.
And the other unique thing about Apple is they are about the only, other than the Apple itself, the word Apple, it's about the only brand I can think of that can come up with really bad names and make them distinctive and enforceable overnight. Because everything I talked about descriptive domains, if you think about it, iPod, AirPods, iMac, well, maybe not iMac, but iPad for sure is a descriptive domain, a
Yeah.
descriptive name.
Uh-huh.
But because, and they're a perfect example for that reason too, because in order to overcome that problem, you can enforce it if you can prove acquired distinctiveness. And that is a very high burden because it's based on how much marketing and advertising money you spend. So Apple has so many people around the world. The minute they release a product, it doesn't matter. Everybody knows it immediately, right?
Well,
They
even the
build.
word Apple, though, even the word Apple, right?
Well, but that's another interesting story, which I've been following for like 15 years or so, because they actually entered into something called, and I do these as a trademark lawyer, we do these, this comes up quite often, surprisingly often. It's called a coexistence agreement, where the trademark office might reject you, but it turns out there's really not a conflict between the products or services. And oh God, 35 years ago or so, Apple entered into an agreement with the Beatles because the Beatles owned Apple Records. That's who owned Apple.
Interesting.
And they in that consent agreement, basically what's done in a consent agreement or coexistence, it says we'll coexist, we won't step on each other's toes, and we will do whatever it takes to avoid confusion. And in that case, it was specifically, we won't sell music. Because at the time, all Apple sold was computers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fast forward 20 years later, hello, we lied.
Yeah. So how did we get around that?
Another lawsuit that was huge in London over breach of that agreement. And it went on for several years. But really, what it came down to is Apple wanted the Beatles' music on Apple iTunes.
Ah.
And so I have no idea how much they paid to get it, but I'm sure it was a lot of money.
I'm sure it was worth it, though, because we know
Yeah.
what Apple is. So, and
Yeah. So,
well,
yeah, I admire them. And there's others, but that's the one I think about a lot.
yeah, no, I think that is a great example of just a global company that has really done it so well and has attracted really the whole world's population. I mean, there's nobody that doesn't know Apple. So at the end of the show, I like to do a little summary of the key elements that we talked about. So and that's the Waist Up Wardrobe wrap up. So the first thing I'd love for you to just highlight is what is the one major takeaway here when it comes to trademark patents or copyrights, whatever area. We should probably just highlight trademark since it's something that we work with more often. And I mean, that's not true, but we've been talking about that a lot. But what's the one takeaway you want the audience to understand about trademarks?
Mm. Well, legitimize your brand. And if you're going to choose, try to protect a trademark, look for a trademark that is distinctive, helps people help you be memorable and stand out in the marketplace.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I mean, all the brands that really stand out have those features. You also talked about some tools and tips, including your art of the trademarkable brand, and that would be to the three-prong test, which I'm gonna really highlight that as a tool that you're leaving us with. What would that can you repeat them one more time, the three pieces?
Sure. It's ART. I just created that acronym. I arranged them so I could have a mnemonic memory, which is it available? Not already owned by somebody else?
Yep.
Is it registerable, i.e. not descriptive and generic? And then you got to create trademark use.
Exactly. Well, that is a great rule of thumb to think about as you build your brand. And finally, an action item. Let's say you have a business owner, whether they're a startup or they've been in business and they've got a great trademarkable brand, but they just don't know where to start. What would be one easy action item for them to get started in the process of trademarking?
Well, yeah, research your market, see what else is out there.
Yeah.
And if you want to try to do it yourself, I was going to share with your audience an opportunity to have a free PDF copy of my book, which is all about trademarks. It's not how to do the filing, but it goes through I think some great basic information, how to select the types of trademarks, how to select one, that is distinctive that you can register. And then it describes the process, and and it gives you some examples of some things to get you thinking, so
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, we always have a hashtag, and for this episode, it's hashtag IP and shine. So whoever puts in the hashtag IP and shine while during like a replay, then we can identify them to get your downloadable book. I would love, thank you for offering that. That would be awesome. So the downloadable book that Cheryl has that she's offering so generously, we'll give them sort of the step-by-step or the process, right, of how to deal with trademarking their ideas. And we can get that, the audience can get that if we can identify them by them putting the hashtag IP and shine in the comments. Now, this episode lives on Facebook. People replay it. And so it's a great place to go back to see, who answer questions and see who really wants to take advantage of this. So thank you so
Well,
much,
thank you.
Cheryl, for
It was
being
so much fun to be on your show. I love
yeah,
it.
despite the technical difficulties.
Yeah, well, see, we overcame them.
Overcame them. That's just how we roll in business, right?
You
But
have to.
it was a pleasure having you. I really feel like you've got a wealth of knowledge to share. So I hope that maybe we can bring you back on the show and kind of dig even deeper.
Yeah, I think I'd be great, because there are a couple of things I would enjoy sharing about how people can protect some stuff on their own. There are things they can do on their own that are
Oh,
simple.
that
Co
is actually a really good information. Maybe we do another show and we just kind of talk about that.
Yeah, because there's a lot of things that don't require a lawyer that
Yeah,
you can do, to
yeah.
protect yourself.
And I think people don't know, right? They don't know that they might not need a lawyer for certain things, or and they might not even know if they need a lawyer for something. So that's a really great topic. But thank you so much for being
Well,
here
I
today.
thank you for having me. I was so looking forward to it.
Yeah.
And I love what you do, and I love your show. It's great.
Thank you, Cheryl. You're a diehard supporter of Jade House's style and Waste Supportive, so I appreciate that very much. And Waste Supportive Nation, there you have it. The topic of the do's and don'ts when it comes to trademarking your ideas and your business. We really went deep into this conversation, but we could go even deeper. So perhaps we bring Cheryl back one day. But in the meantime, you know that every Thursday at 11:30 live, we are here on Facebook, bring you a brand new show so that we can enhance your entrepreneurial experience and give you as much information as possible, bring you the best experts out there when it comes to building that amazing, dominating business in the industry. So join us next Thursday at 11:30, same time, Pacific time, and bring a friend.
Okay, Cheryl bounced.
Oh, she did. Okay, that's fine. I have a urgent matter I need to take care of, but let me see if I can
Okay.
do the recap.
You want to try and do it? Yeah.
I wanna try and do it. And then there's a point in the recording that I was wondering if you can give me the snippet of it. It's like at minute like 1950 or something like around there, and then just like a enough to so I can post it on social media. Like I think the limit is a minute and a half. So can I do that? Can you do that for me?
Send me an email with all the info.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
that'd be the best
Let
way.
me go ahead and do this really quick. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Let me get out of here. Okay.
As entrepreneurs, we are inventors, we are creatives, and we really need to understand the world of intellectual property, how to trademark your ideas, how to copyright them, or even patent them if you have an invention. So, how do you do this, and how do you know the steps to take to effectively trademark your? I'm gonna start over again. Okay. As entrepreneurs, let's see, as entrepreneurs, we are inventors. Understand. As entrepreneurs, we are inventors, and understanding the world of intellectual property, including trademarks, copyrights, and patents, is really critical and vital to growing our business and seeing our brand succeed. So, how do you do that? And what are the steps you need to build that brand and really trademark it effectively so that nobody can take over your business or take over your trademark and you lose all the intellectual property you put into your work? Is that good enough?
Yeah, that'll work.
Okay. In episode 139 of Waist Up Wardrobe, the Waist Up Wardrobe weekly wrap up. Okay, start over again. In episode 139 of Waist Up Wardrobe, let's talk trademark do's and don'ts. The In episode 139 of Waist Up Wardrobe, let's talk about trademarking do's and don'ts. The Waist Up Wardrobe weekly wrap up, in a nutshell, boiled down to this. The main takeaway here is if you have something that you think is trademarkable, that you don't want anybody infringing on, you have to start the process of protecting that. Talking to a trademark attorney or doing some searches to see if anybody else is using it is a great place to start. So that's the main takeaway here, is that you really need to think about protecting all the ideas that come through your business that you think can be trademarkable and are unique to you and your business so that you can stand out with it. A tool to use is an acronym that our guest told us about, and that is, how do you know if something is trademarkable? And she called it the art of a trademarkable brand. I'm going to start there. And she called it the art of a trademarkable brand. How do you know if you have a trademarkable brand? Well, she had a 3-prong test. The first thing you need to consider is your So a 3-prong test boils down to this. Is this So the 3-prong test boils down to this. Is this trademark trademarkable? So is it something that you can actually trademark? Because not everything is something that you can put a trademark to. Number 2, is it available? Does somebody else have it? And number 3 is, well, how are you going to use it? You kind of need to know how you're going to put it into use so that you can specify that in your application. Otherwise, you might risk not being able to actually get that trademark. And finally, what's an action item? An action item when it comes to thinking about trademarking something is do your searching, do your homework, look into it and look into the industry and see if anybody's using it and how they're using it, and see if you can pursue it because it could be available to you.
I can work with that.
Does that work?
Yeah, I can work with that.
When do you think you can have the speedy recap on this one? Because this one's a good one. I wanted to put out.
Tomorrow.
Okay. Okay. All right. I gotta run. Sorry. Or maybe today. Maybe later today.
It depends when I get done here.
Okay. Sounds good. Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
All right, see you. Bye.
Bye.